He was a slim, hard-eyed Kentucky horseman of medium height, not as handsome as his dark-haired 16-year-old son.
Hey, boys, how you doing? Hey, Dan, do me a favor, will you? Run along to Roger's box and pick up my brushes. I left them right inside the door.
Sure, Dan said.
Rick, will I see you back at the house? In 5, right?
Dan Headley jogged along to the 3 big stallion boxes at the far end of the yard, unclipped the lock on the 8-year-old Red Roger's door, and slipped inside, muttering softly,
Hey, Roger, old boy. How you been? They still treating you good?
The big stallion, just a tad under 17 hands, and almost milk-white now with the advancing years, was not tethered on a long shank to the sturdy iron ring on the wall. This was a bit unusual for a stallion of his hot-blooded breeding. The Roger gazed at young Dan Headley moving softly behind him. He betrayed no anger, but those who knew him would have noticed his ears set slightly back, and his eye flicking first forward, then back, far back, looking at Dan without moving his head. The boy bent down to pick up the brushes, and as he straightened up, the stallion moved imperceptibly. Dan, sensing a shift in the horse's mood, reacted like the lifelong horseman he was, lifted up his right arm like a traffic cop, and murmured,
Whoa there, Roger. Good boy. Easy, old buddy.
Right then, Red Roger attacked quite suddenly with not a semblance of warning. He whipped his head around and slammed his teeth over Danny's bicep, biting like a crocodile, right through the muscle and splintering the big bone in the upper arm. And he didn't let go. He dragged the boy down, pulling him onto the straw, preparing for the killer stallion's favorite trick, to kneel on his prey, like a camel or an elephant, crushing the rib cage. Dan Headley screamed with pain and terror, and his scream echoed into the yard. Rick Hunter was on his way down the walkway toward the main house when he heard it. He pounded across the grass quadrangle toward the boxes as he heard his friend's second scream. He dashed straight to the first box where Red Roger lived. When he got there, he searched instantly for a weapon and saw the trusty Louisville slugger against the wall. Grabbing it with his right hand, he whipped open the door and faced with horror the scene before him. Danny, blood pouring from his smashed right arm, trying to protect himself against the onslaught of the stallion looming over him. Rick never hesitated, wound back the bat, and slammed it into Red Roger's ribs with a blow that would surely have killed a man. It did not, however, kill Red Roger. The great white horse swung his head around as if deciding which of the 2 boys to attack first. So Ricky hit him again with all his force, crashing the bat into the ribs of the stallion, simultaneously yelling,
Get out, Danny! For Christ's sake, get out! Shut the door, but don't lock it!
Dan Headley, half in shock, maddened by the pain, rolled and crawled out of the box. Still flat on the ground, he kicked the door shut and passed out from the pain. And now Rick was on his own. He flattened himself into the pose of the horse's most ancient and feared enemy, the lion. He tried to assume the crouched, threatening stance of a big cat preparing to pounce, trying to reawaken thousands of years of unconscious phobia in the psyche of the horse. He roared like a lion, all the while trying to get the warm-up jacket from around his waist. The fight seemed to have gone right out of Raja, who was now standing stock still. And he was not prepared when the 6'4" heir to Hunter Valley jumped up and dived at his head, ramming the jacket hard down over his eyes and face. Red Raja was in the pitch dark now, and no horse likes to move when he's unable to see anything. He just stood there, stock still, trembling, blind now, with the jacket still over his head. And Rick carefully edged toward the door, eased it quietly open, and made his escape, slamming the lock shut as he went. Outside, Dan was conscious again. Rick hit the alarm bell and sat with his buddy until help arrived minutes later. He and both their fathers remained with Dan all night in Lexington Hospital, while 2 surgeons meticulously re-stitched the muscle, reset and pinned the shattered right arm. And in the morning, when Dan was in the recovery room, the patient finally came to, slowly focusing on the young lion from Hunter Valley. He shook his head in silent admiration of his friend's courage, and then he grinned and said,
Jesus, Ricky, you just saved my life. I told you we'd be better off on a warship. You're out there, old buddy, said Rick. You think Annapolis is ready for us?
The White House, Washington, D.C., January 23rd, 2007. Admiral Arnold Morgan was alone in his office, contemplating the two major issues in his life at this particular lunchtime. The first was his decision to stay on as the National Security Advisor to the President for one more year, against all of his better judgment. The second was a Wagnerian-sized roast beef sandwich, fortified with heavy mayonnaise and mustard, into a feast he would never have dared to order had his secretary and wife-to-be, the gorgeous Cathy O'Brien, been anywhere near the precincts of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Happily, she was out until 4 p.m. The Admiral, 61 years old now, was still miraculously in robust health, and not more than 8 pounds heavier than he had been as a nuclear submarine commander 27 years previously. He tucked a large white linen napkin into his shirt collar and bit luxuriously into his sandwich. "I still have no idea what the hell I'm doing here," he muttered to himself. "The goddamn world's gone quiet temporarily, and I'm sitting here like a goddamn lapdog waiting for our esteemed but flaky leader." A complete flake. The words had been used about the President over and over at that final meeting at the home of Admiral Scott Dunsmore, the wise and deceptively wealthy former chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Arnold Morgan could not understand what the fuss was about. Plenty of other NSAs had resigned, but apparently he was not permitted that basic human right. Christ, everyone had been there, and no one had even informed him. He'd walked stone-cold into a room containing not only General Scannell, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, but 2 former chairmen, plus the Chief of Naval Operations and the Commandant of the United States Marines. The Defense Secretary was there and 2 senior members of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Altogether, there were 4 current members of the National Security Council in attendance. Their joint mission was simple: to persuade Admiral Morgan to withdraw his resignation and to remain in office until the Republican president's second term was over. A few weeks previously, at the conclusion of a particularly dangerous and covert naval operation in China, the president had demonstrated such shocking self-interest and lack of judgment that he could no longer be trusted to act in the strict interests of the USA. And now Morgan was back at the factory, and he was ruminating on the general calm that had existed in the world's known trouble spots for the past month. The Middle East was, for the moment, serene. Terrorists in general seemed to be still on their Christmas break. India and Pakistan had temporarily ceased to threaten each other. And China, the big tiger, had been very quiet since last fall. Indeed, according to the satellite photographs, they were not even conducting fleet exercises near Taiwan, which made for a change. The only halfway interesting piece of intelligence to come Admiral Morgan's way since Christmas was a report put together by the CIA's Russian desk. According to one of their field operators in Moscow, the Rozhvorozheny factory on the outskirts of the city was suddenly making large quantities of moored mines. This was regarded as unusual, since Rozhvorozheny's known expertise was in the production of seabed mines, the MDM series, particularly the lethal 1 3/4-ton ship-killing MDM-6, which can be laid through the torpedo tubes of a submarine. Rozhvorozheny was now apparently making a lot of updated, custom-made PLT-3 mines, moored 1-tonners, which can be laid either through torpedo tubes or from surface ships. The CIA had no information about where the mines were going, if anywhere, but their man had been certain this was a very unusual development. Most Russian-made mines these days were strictly for export. Admiral Morgan growled to himself. Now, who the hell wants a damn large shipment of moored PLT-3s, huh? He chewed on the roast beef and pondered silently. He did not much like it. If the goddamn penniless Russians are building several hundred expensive mines, someone's ordered them. And if someone's ordered them, they plan to lay them, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't have ordered them. The Great Hall of the People, Tiananmen Square, Beijing. 0900 local time, January the 23rd, 2007. The largest government building in the world, home of the National People's Congress, was locked, barred, and bolted this Tuesday morning. Business was cancelled, the public was banned, and there were more military armed guards patrolling the snow-covered western side of the square.